Good morning. Welcome to the Asian Art Museum's New Year Bell Ringing Storytelling, our first ever as a virtual program. I'm Allison Wyckoff, and I work with an incredible team of colleagues, both inside and out of the education department, who help bring offerings like these to life. 2020 has been a tumultuous and trying year, and I know we all look forward to new beginnings in 2021. Saying goodbye to the old and welcoming the new with stories is just the medicine we need, and I'm grateful to share this space with all of you today, albeit remotely. After storytelling, I encourage you to join the museum's annual bell ringing ceremony on Facebook Live or through our YouTube channel. I put the links in the chat so you have that information. That program starts at 11, so you can hop over to one of those platforms after storytelling ends. It's my great honor to introduce Linda Yamoto, one of the museum's talented storytellers who will be leading today's program. Although Linda has been a part of the museum family for a long time, she hasn't been able to attend bell ringing in the past because of the Oshogatsu event she hosts in her home in celebration of the new year. Although trying, we've lucked out with these circumstances in that case. I know you've got some great images from your own celebration, Linda. Can you share those and talk about the Japanese New Year traditions in your home?
Sure. Hi, Allison, and welcome everyone. Yes, like many Japanese American families, we've celebrated Oshogatsu, New Year's Day, for as long as I can remember, from the time I was quite little. We had a big open house where all friends, family, neighbors came and ate the entire day. So you'll see some pictures here of the tradition that I continue to this day with my friends, family, children. And the upper right hand corner, you could see our table, so full of all the different foods. And in the lower right, you'll see a big platter called Hachimoti, which is common to certain regions of Japan. But it features some of the very special foods that you have to have on New Year's Day. Like a lot of cultures, you eat specific foods that will ensure that you have long life, good health, good luck, prosperity in the new year. And then I wanted to point out over on the left hand side, the thing that kind of looks like a snowman with a orange for his head, that's called Kagami Mochi. And it's traditionally made from the mochi, which is that glutinous, very short grain rice that's steamed and pounded. Most people know mochi ice cream, with the ice cream on the outside, but the mochi, like in this, is just that sticky rice. So the Kagami mochi is made with the two of the mochi with the orange on the head, and it's placed in a special place in the home. And then when the year god Toshigami comes and visits every home on New Year's Day, when he sees the Kagami mochi, then he brings to the home prosperity, good luck, longevity, all those wonderful things. Now, I'd like to begin by telling you a story, a traditional New Year's story called Jizo and the Old Man. Now, here you will see some Jizo statues, very common in Japan. You'll see them on roadways, you even see them in airports, because Jizo is the deity, the guardian figure of travelers and children. And you will often see them decorated, dressed with little red hats, red bibs. There we go. Yeah. So this is a common sight. I think sometimes Yuzo looks kind of like a child, but I love these statues. All right. Mukashi mukashi, aru tokoro ni, long, long ago in Japan, in a small village in the mountains, lived an old man and an old woman. In Japanese, we would call them oba-san, old woman, oji-san, old man. They were poor but very hard working, and they made their living by going into the bamboo forest, collecting bamboo poles, cutting them, bringing and then cutting strips, long strips of bamboo, and then weaving the bamboo into simple but sturdy, beautiful hats. And the hats would keep the sun off of you in the summer and the rain and the snow off of you in the winter. Now, one day as they were weaving the hats, the old man turned to his wife. Oba-san, soon it will be New Year's Day. How I wish we had some mochi to help us celebrate. It would bring us good luck in the new year. Yes, husband, that would be nice. Why don't you take these 5 hats that we've made down into the town tomorrow and sell them? Then you could buy 1 or 2 mochi. That would be enough for us. So early the next morning, the man gathered up the 5 hats, slung them over his shoulder, put his own hat on, and began the trek down into the town. Now, as he went down the mountain trail, he came to an intersection, 2 roads, and there were 5 stone Jizo statues. He always stopped to bow and thank the Jizo for protecting him on his travels. But he apologized for not having any offering for them this time, and he continued on his way. Now, when he got to the town, he walked every street saying, Jobuna Boshi, Irakane, sturdy hats. Wouldn't you like one? Jobuno Boshi, sturdy hats. But there was so much hustling and bustling going on, getting ready for the new year, that no one wanted to buy his hats. And it was getting late, and much worse, it was starting to snow quite heavily. So sadly, the man trudged back up the hill. Now, when he came to the intersection, there were now 6 stone Jizo statues, and they were all covered in snow. Ah, oh, Kinotokuni, what a pity. And so he brushed the snow off of all the statues. And then he had an idea. He took the hats he was carrying and he tied one on each of the jizo. But there were 6 jizo and he only had 5 hats. So without hesitating, he took his own hat off and put it on the last jizo. And then he hurried home. Now, his wife was warming herself by the fire when he came home. Oh, husband, come, warm yourself. You look so cold. You're nearly frozen. What happened? And so he explained to her what had happened and how he gave the hats to the Jizo. Oh, husband, so much better for you to do a kindness than we have all the mochi in the world. We will be fine for the new year. And so they had some rice porridge for supper and they went to bed. Now, sometime after midnight, in the distance, you could hear shh, 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 shh. And the sound got louder shh, 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 shh. And you could hear voices. A kind old man walking in the snow gave his hats to the old Jizo. A kind old man walking in the snow gave his hats to the stone Jizo. And then, whomp! That woke up the couple. It was right outside their door. So they ran, they pushed open the door, and there on their doorstep was the largest mochi rice cake they had ever seen in their lives. It was enormous. But who could have brought them such a gift? And looking out over the distance, they could see some tracks in the snow. And there, going up the hill, were a line of 6 stone Jizo, each wearing a straw hat. Well, the old couple did indeed have a wonderful oshogatsu because they had enough mochi for themselves and enough to share with all their friends and neighbors. Akemashite omedetou gozaimasu. Happy New Year. Now, here are a couple of images of Jizo that are in the museum's collection. You see, there's a beautiful stone sculpture and then a print on the right. Now, even though the museum is not open now, you can see these images in the online collection, which is just an amazing resource.
Linda, I love this story. And I'm curious why the man dresses the Jizo.
Well, some people say, oh, he was just doing a good deed. And I love this. I like to use a cross cultural reference. I say he was doing a mitzvah. But I think in my mind, he did it because it brought him such joy to be able to give something back to the Jizo for protecting him in all his travels.
So the next story is really made for this time of COVID-19 and features ofuda, or protective charms that were used to ward off disease long before masks were in fashion. Linda, can you tell the three charms?
Yes, I love this story. Mukashi mukashi aru tokoro ni. Long, long ago in Japan, a boy lived as an apprentice, a student to a kind old priest. The temple where they lived was in the mountains. Now it was fall, and the trees were ablaze in color. The young boy could see that on the mountain across the way, the chestnut trees were beginning to ripen, and he knew that soon chestnuts would be falling to the ground. And he and the priest loved roasted chestnuts. So he asked the priest if he could go over and collect some chestnuts for the two of them. Oh, no, my son, you cannot go over there. They say a Yamanba lives there. Oh, I'm not afraid of such monsters. Oh, but little one, she can change shape, trick you, and eat you up. Oh, well, then I will just beat her up. Oh, I don't think so. But the boy was so persistent and so insistent about wanting to collect chestnuts that the priest finally relented and said he could go, but he had to take three ofuda, three charms, strips of paper with very special writing for protection on them. So the boy took the ofuda, slipped it in his sleeve, and took off down the road. Stop, 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 stop. He was so happy to be out. And when he reached the Flower Mountain, he saw lots of chestnuts that had fallen to the ground. Well, he had brought a big basket, so he began collecting chestnuts, chestnuts, chestnuts. And by the time his basket was full, he didn't realize that the sun had set. It was getting dark and cold, and he wasn't exactly sure which way back to the temple. Should he go through the shadows and try and find his way home? Maybe there really was a Yaman by here. Or should he look for some shelter nearby? Well, then he noticed some lights glowing, pika, 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 pika. So he followed those lights, and sure enough, it took him to a little cottage. So he went up to the door, dun dun dun, dun dun dun. An old woman with a kind face opened the door. Are you lost, my boy? Yes, I live in the temple, but I'm not sure how to get there at nighttime. May I spend the night here? Oh, yes, come in, come in. And so the kind old woman fed him some supper. They roasted some of his chestnuts and shared them. And then she gave him an ofton, a mattress that she spread out right by the fire where he could sleep. She went behind a paper folding screen and slept there. Now, it began to rain, pota, 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 very gently, pota, pota, and the rain just lulled the boy to sleep. But after a while, the rain sounded like it was saying, Abunai, Abunai, danger, danger. So the boy sat up. What did that mean? Was the old woman in danger? Perhaps he should go check on her. So he went over to the shoji screen and he licked his finger and he made a little hole in the screen. And then he peeked through the hole. And what he saw was a Yamamba with wild hair and glowing eyes. Gira, gira, gira. He began to run, but the old woman caught him. Oh, good, you are awake. I'm hungry. What did you want to eat? You, I love tasty little boys. Oh, no, I would not taste very good right now. Why? Uh, because, because I need to go to the bathroom. Oh, you are right. That would not taste very good. Very well. I will take you to the outhouse, but I am going to wait outside. So she escorted the boy to the outhouse. He closed the door and inside, oh, what shall I do? What shall I do? He remembered his ofda, his charm. So he said, speak in my voice. And then he stuck it to the outhouse wall and he climbed out a little window and began to run. Pata, 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 pata. Outside the door, the Amamba stood. Are you done yet? Chotto, chotto mate, just a minute, just a minute. Are you done yet? Chotto mate, just a minute, just a minute. You must be done by now. Chotto mate, just a minute, just a minute. With that, the Yamamba pushed open the door, and when she saw the charm on the wall, she knew she had been fooled. So she sniffed the air and she could tell which way the boy had run, and she ran chase after him. Foo, 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 foo. The boy, bata, 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 bata. He could see the Yamamba was catching up to him. Foo, foo, foo. So he took out his second charm and said, become a river, and threw it over his shoulder. In front of the Yamamba, a vast river was formed. But unfortunately, the Yamamba could swim. Bacha, 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 bacha. Foo, 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 foo. Bata, 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 bata. Oh no, she's catching up. Bata, 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 bata. He took out his third charm. Become a mountain of sand. Threw it over his shoulder. An enormous mountain of sand formed in front of the Yamamba. She began climbing up the mountain and sliding down, climbing up and sliding down, climbing up and sliding down. Finally, she made it to the top of the mountain and whoom, slid down the other side. Bata, 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 bata. By now, the boy had made it back to the temple. Bata, bata, bata. Don, 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 don. Let me in, help, help. Oh, who is that? It's me, let me in. Oh, you mean the boy that was going to beat up the Yamamba? Yes, let me in. Oh, very well, let me get on my underwear. The old man was teasing the boy. Finally, when he opened the gate, the boy ran in and hid. And then the priest sat down and began roasting some mochi over the fire. When the Yamamba broke the gate, came crashing into the room. Doshin, 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 doshin. Where is that boy? Well, a boy does live here, but he went up the mountain, collected. I chased him here. I know he's here. If you don't tell me where he is, I will eat you up. Oh, I see. You're hungry. Well, I am roasting some mochi here. Would you like some as an appetizer? That smells awfully good. All right. So the Yamamba sat down and amu, ate about 50 mochi. Mmm, gochiso-sama deshita. Even though she was a Yamamba, she did have good manners. Thank you for the delicious meal. Now, where's that boy? Um, chotomate. I understand that you have the power to become anything you want. Yes, anything I want. Can you become big as this temple? Oh, that's nothing. So the Yamamba twirled round and round and grew and grew and grew and grew until she towered over the priest. Oh, that's most impressive. But tell me, can you become something really small? Like as small as a soybean? Oh, that's nothing. So the Amamba twirled round and round and round and shrank down to a little tiny soybean. Oh, wonderful, said the priest. And he took his hashi, his chopsticks, picked up the Yamamba soybean, stuffed it into a mochi, and swallowed it right down. Oishi, delicious. And as they say at the end of any good meal, gochiso-sama deshita. Thank you for the delicious meal. Oshimai. Now, this I wanted to show you is an ofuda for our times because this is an anti coronavirus ofuda charm. So, this is what we all need.
And more stories like that. I love the humor and the magic. Someone asked in the chat if Yamamba are the same as Oni.
Well, Yamamba is a mountain woman. Um, and in some cases, she can change shape. She's monstrous. Other times, she's extremely wise, gives good counsel. So she's different than an Oni.
Okay. I love the onomatopoeia. That really brings the story to life. Can you tell us a little bit about onomatopoeia and Japanese storytelling and language?
Oh, I love their onomatopoeia, and I think they have over 1,000 different ways of describing things. But it's like when the boy's walking up the path, or when he's running, it's so expressive, and so I love using it in storytelling.
And so your next story is about cats.
Oh yes. Okay. Mukashi mukashi, aru tokoro ni. Long, long ago in Japan, in a small village out in the country, lived a poor farmer. He and his wife had several children, and try as they might, as hard as they worked, they had a hard time keeping them all well fed and well clothed, and that worried him. Now, the oldest boy was 14, very strong. He was a big help to his father around the farm. And the girls were a big help too. But their youngest child, a boy, was small and frail, and he did what he could. But what he loved to do more than anything was to draw. Now, this family was much too poor to afford paper, ink, or brushes, but he would go out into the garden and he would smooth the dirt, and with a stick, he would draw what he saw. And what he loved to draw more than anything were cats. He would draw cats sleeping, cats preening, cats playing. He loved to draw cats. Now, his parents knew he would never become a farmer, but he was so bright they thought perhaps he would become a priest. So the father took the son down to the local temple and asked the priest if his son might become his student. So the priest asked the boy several difficult questions, and his answers were so clever that the priest agreed to take the boy on as his student. The boy loved his lessons. He was learning how to read. But what brought him the most joy was when the priest gave him his own writing kit. He gave him an ink stick, he gave him the ink stone, this little bowl, and taught him how to put just the right amount of water in, how to grind the ink stick to make just the right consistency of ink. And then he taught him how to hold his pen, dip the ink, and then write his kanji letters, his Japanese characters. Then the priest gave the boy a sheet of rice paper. And so the boy very diligently practiced his kanji until this feeling just overwhelmed him. And pretty soon he was drawing cats, cats sleeping, cats preening, cats playing. When the priest saw this, how could you waste such paper with your drawings? Oh, the boy was so embarrassed and he promised never to do it again. But a few days later, when he was given another sheet of rice paper, he began very diligently writing his kanji until that feeling just overtook him again. And soon cats, cats, cats covered his entire paper. Oh, my boy. Perhaps someday you will become a good artist, but you will never become a priest. I am sorry, but you must leave. Well, the boy was sad, but he understood. So he packed up his few belongings. But then he was so happy when the priest allowed him to keep his writing kit. I will give you one piece of advice, my boy. Remember this well. During the night, avoid the large, keep to the small. Avoid the large, keep to the small. What did that mean? But the boy was too embarrassed to ask the priest, so he just said his goodbyes and his thank yous. Domo arigato, domo arigato. Now, when he left the temple, he didn't know where to go. He didn't want to go home. His parents would be so ashamed of him. But he knew that there was a temple in the next town over, 12 miles away. He thought perhaps that priest would take him in as a student. And so he began to walk toward that town. St, 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 st. By the time he got there, it was dark. There was no one in the streets, but he could see the temple at the top of the hill. So he began walking up the hill. And then when he reached the large wooden door of the temple, dong, 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 no answer. Dong, 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 dong. Still no answer. So he pushed on the door, and to his surprise, it opened. So he stuck his head in. Sumimasen, excuse me, is anyone here? No answer. So he walked in, and when his eyes adjusted to the dark, he found a lantern. So he lit it, and holding up the lantern, he looked around this vast room. It was dusty and covered in cobwebs. Doesn't anyone live here anymore? He wondered. And then he saw something that made his eyes light up. Shoji screens, folding screens with rice paper panels. So he took out his writing kit, found some water, ground the ink, put in his pen, and soon he was painting cats. Cats sleeping, cats preening, cats playing, cats running. And on the last panel, he painted the largest cat he had ever painted in his life. It was leaping into the air. Then he realized how tired he was from that walk. He thought he might just curl up in a ball and sleep right there. And then he remembered what that priest had told him. During the night, avoid the large, stay to the small. Well, this room was really large. And he looked around, and then he saw some low cupboards with sliding wooden doors. Oh, that would be just right. So he went over, slid open the doors, climbed in, slid the doors closed behind him. And then he went to sleep. He was so tired. But sometime in the night, he heard something sniffing right outside his cupboard doors. It was pitch black. The lantern had gone out. He didn't know what that was, so he didn't move a muscle. And then he heard this yowling, hissing, screeching, shaking. What was it? What was it? What was going on? All this yowling and screeching and hissing. Oh, oh, oh. And then whoomp! And silence. He was too scared to look. So he waited and waited until the first light of the morning began to come into his hiding place. So he slid open the doors and he looked out, and there on the floor was a big pool of blood. So he climbed out of his hiding place and stood up, looked all around, and there in the middle of the temple floor was an enormous rat, as big as a cow, like dead on the floor. But what could have killed such a monstrous rat? So, looking at the screens that he had painted the night before, all the cats had blood dripping down from their mouths. And the cat that was leaping, it had fur, flesh, and blood on its mouth. Well, he ran down the hill to find the villagers and tell them what had happened. They returned to the temple with him, and they explained to him that that temple had been abandoned quite a long time ago because this monstrous rat would come out every night. In fact, some samurai had come to try and capture the rat, and they were never seen again. Well, the boy was hailed as a hero for having rid the town of this rat, and they offered to let him live there in the temple. And he did stay there for a while, and he cleaned it all up until some new priest came to take over the duties. Now, that boy never did become a priest, but he did become a well-known painter, a painter who only painted cats. Now, this image is part of the museum's collection. I love this print because it was done by Suguhara Fujita, who was a famous painter and printmaker who was born and raised in Tokyo. He graduated from the art academy and then a few years later moved to France, where he combined Japanese aesthetics with European techniques, and he became very famous. He was friends with Picasso and Matisse. And what I love about this print in particular is if you ever look for a photo of Fujiya-san, he looks very much like this cat.
So Linda, a couple of people have asked questions in the chat, so I want to ask those before we move on to the final story.
Mhm.
Are these stories traditionally told on New Year's Eve? And
Well, Jizo is definitely a New Year's Day story, so that's a very traditionally told then. The other two stories we kind of chose because of the temple setting and the fact that you're going to be doing the bell ringing ceremony next, which takes place in a temple. So we felt that it kind of related
yeah.
to today.
And what are the origins of these stories? And how are they continued to be shared, in Japan and elsewhere?
There are many, many, many storytellers in Japan, I am happy to say. And in fact, this next story that I'm going to tell you, I learned from a woman named Hiroko Fujita. She's now in her 80s, lives in Japan, and she has traveled the country teaching teachers how to use storytelling in their work with students. And she has many, many storytellers that are kind of her students. They call themselves the young Yamanbas.
Mhm. That's great. And then the last question is, what do cats symbolize? Do you know the symbolism of cats in Japanese art?
I think it's probably pretty similar to what we believe in Western culture. You know that there are many lives, many lived. You know they have many lives. That they are self-assured, that they can be very courageous, strong. They're also elusive. So I think it's pretty much the same beliefs that we have about cats.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Okay, so now we're moving on to our last story.
Yes, and before I tell you this, I want to show you, yep, this illustration of this is called Bota Mochi. So it's a little bit different type of mochi. It's the same sticky glutinous rice. And you'll see on the right-hand side, this one does have some sweet bean paste filling, but it's the outside coatings that I want you to notice. You see how it has these different colors of coatings. It could be the sweet red beans, it could be the tan one is kind of toasted soybean flour. And I want you to notice the shape because the shape and the coating, if you use your imagination, you could kind of imagine these as being frogs and toads, right? Bota mochi, also called ohagi by some people, depending on the time of year that it's made. Okay. Mukashi mukashi, aru tokoro ni. Long, long ago in Japan, there lived a bachan, a grandma. But she was not a kind, sweet bachan. No, you would say she was kind of a stingy bachan. And she lived with her grown son and his wife, her daughter-in-law. Now, one morning, Bachan was getting ready to go down to do some shopping. She had put on her hat, she had put on her jacket, and she was ready to go when, ton, 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 there was a knock at the door. So she opened the door, and there was her neighbor. He had brought her an entire box of Bota Mochi. It was her favorite treat. But as I said, she was not a very kind or generous Bachan, and she didn't want to share this with anyone. So at first she was just going to hide the box of Bota Mochi, and then she had an idea. Listen carefully, Bota Mochi. This is Bachan speaking. If you hear my voice, you stay Bota Mochi. But if you hear anyone else's voice, You turn into frogs and toads, okay? Bota Mochi for Bachan, frogs and toads for anyone else. And then she hid the box. Then she went down into town to do her shopping. Well, her daughter in law heard her talking to the box. She thought, oh, that stingy Bachan, I am going to teach her a lesson. So she got the box out of its hiding place, opened it up, took out all the Bota Mochi and hid it. And then she went into their backyard, which was kind of meadowy. It had a small pond, and there were plenty of frogs and toads. So, taking her apron, she caught as many frogs and toads as she could. Then, bringing them back in the house, she put the frogs and toads into the empty botamochi box. And then she tied up the furoshiki again and hid the box where Bachan had left it. Well, not too much later, Bachan returned from her shopping. She took off her hat, she took off her jacket, and then she went straight to where she had hidden the botamochi. Oh, it's still heavy. I don't think anybody found you. Oh boy. I am so excited. I love botamochi. I love botamochi. There were all these big, bulgy eyes staring at her. Oh, very good, Potamochi, very good. My daughter-in-law must have tried to open you, and you turned into frogs and toads. Okay, but now it's Bachan. Turn back to Botamochi. Okay, turn back to Botamochi. Oh, there's eyes are still bulging at her. Oh, no, no, no. Turn back to Botamochi. Stop, 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 stop. Don't dump, don't jump. All that delicious coating is going to fall off. Ghetto, 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 ghetto. Shh, 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 shh. Ghetto, 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 ghetto. Shh, shh, shh. My daughter-in-law is going to hear you. Quiet, quiet, quiet. Now turn back to Botamochi. Ooh, you turn back to Botamochi right this minute. Now, when the box quieted down, she looked very carefully. Ghetto, 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 ghetto. Oshimai. That is all. Thank you for coming.
Linda, thank you. I love that story. And judging from the comments in the chat, so did everyone else. And you've gotten lots of accolades for just your incredible storytelling. That story about mochi reminds me of the museum's annual mochi pounding ceremony, which you can see right here through this picture. We've worked over the years with Kagami Kai, a local mochi pounding organization that whose mission is to bring traditional mochi pounding to schools and arts organizations, community centers, because this method of pounding mochi is almost obsolete. Mochi is manufactured, machine manufactured, and so we have loved this program, and unfortunately next year we won't be able to offer it, but I will put am putting a link in the chat to our YouTube channel so you can watch a video of past mochi pounding programs. I am also sharing with you all an incredible resource. It is our Japanese New Year cultural celebration virtual packet, which my colleague Triana, who is on the program today, created for the bell ringing program, as well as all of our um, or will create for all of our cultural celebrations. Since we aren't able to offer them in person, she's developed these really rich cultural celebrations packets with recipes and stories and resources about these traditions. So thank you all for joining us today. Please hop over to YouTube or Facebook to watch the bell ringing ceremony with Reverend Akiba, Yoshi Akiba, and Eri Takahashi from Kojinon Temple in Oakland. We are really grateful to them for helping us present our first ever virtual bell ringing ceremony, which it's sort of bittersweet. I'm glad we can offer it, but so sad that we can't celebrate in person. But thank you, Linda. It's wonderful always to hear your stories. And thank you all for joining us. Happy New Year. Um, and may 2021 be a much different year full of love, light, and prosperity.